This episode of Hack Circus is sponsored by Artifact Cards. It's ARTEFACT, artifactshop.com. I think you guys could get a lot out of Artifact Cards as people who are interested in creativity. They are little beautifully produced packaged cards about the size of playing cards, and you get a pen with them, and they're blank and they come in different colours, and they are great for anybody who works with ideas. Personally, I use them to do my flat planning for Hack Circus magazine. Amongst other things, you can use them to design things, so that's for me, that's an interesting idea. You have lots of little white cards and you can lay them out in any arrangement and invent a game or design a website, design a layout for something physically in real space. And I think this is something that's really needed these days. You can use them instead of post-it notes, you can use them for planning talks, you can use them for planning, events, publications, any of the sorts of things I do, to be honest. So head over to artifactshop.com and see what all the fuss is about.
There's something around, we don't give ourselves permission as grown-ups to indulge our flights of fantasy, our playfulness. We do see it as frivolous rather than as deeply important to our souls and how we are, really, to allow ourselves to play.
Welcome to Hack Circus. This week we meet Emma Bearman. Emma is a fantastic sort of impresario, community builder and bringer together of people from different places to create something with a sort of shared imagination. She's unbelievably inspiring. I love talking to her, very, very insightful. She runs something called Playful Anywhere, which used to be called Playful Leeds and originally centred on something called the Playbox. We never quite explain what the Playbox is in this episode, but effectively it's a shipping container from which things can emerge. So she installed it in her local park for a while, and it's since been to different places, different events, and had many different uses. And she organised a programme of events to occur through the summer for the last few years, I believe, out of the Playbox, all around imagination and creating magic and sort of fantastical experiences. And a couple of summers ago, Emma invited me to organise some kind of magic show experience with the Playbox, and we had a really good evening at the park with Steve Faulkner, previous Hack Circus podcast guest, and another friend of mine called Duncan Goff. Emma's also been responsible for several major happenings in Leeds involving communities and participation, such as March of the Robots. And I'd be surprised if you haven't come across Emma's work before. She founded Culture Vulture, which is a fantastic site about cultural happenings in and around Leeds, with events and reviews and so on. Very, very popular, very well known. That was something that she set up quite a few years ago now, and since then she's gone further and further into becoming what she describes as a sort of Willy Wonka figure, creating these magical experiences just completely off her own bat, completely independently, and really just because she thoroughly believes that everybody should have access to play and to fulfilling themselves and making the most of themselves through these experiences. So again, thank you for giving me an excuse to catch up with Emma, and I hope you enjoy this chat as much as I enjoyed having it.
I decided before Christmas, actually. I thought, well, I did a drink detox in November just to prove I can do it more than actually because, well, I wondered if I was an alcoholic, obviously.
Of course, I'm sure.
And just being able to prove that you're not is a good thing. And I wasn't, so I'm not an alcoholic for listeners listening out there. But I was like, there are habits that just aren't making me feel that happy right now.
Yeah.
So I was thinking how I was physically reacting to the news of the world, literally out there, of like Trump and Brexit and things that I felt so vast and massive, and climate change and all the things that I thought, actually, I shouldn't be directing my energies in frivolous play. I should be like trying to do something about Syria and I was like, oh my God, my head is just going to explode. And my addiction to the Twitter fruit machine, literally constantly
it is.
updating and refreshing. I was like, this isn't healthy. So I've just got to cut it out to get some perspective again. And I get so much value from my friendships and networks and stuff on Twitter, and more than a Facebook actually. I was like, I've just got to stop it to understand what it is that's good about it, and to mediate my own behaviour somewhat, because it was becoming ridiculous. I'd be in this state of gloom constantly and couldn't see the wood for the trees, literally, about what mattered or what I could actually do. So it was like I've got to get away.
Did you have a kind of like DTs, like a sort of physical reaction to? Because I started, like we were talking just now, I was my phone battery's gone really bad and it's turned itself off in the night, and I was genuinely a bit panicky. I was like, how am I going to get through the next few hours? It was terrible.
Well, not. I've kind of thought about the DTs element of this, and so forgive me if I continued with my methadone, which is Instagram,
right?
Because I wasn't addicted to Instagram, and I could almost sort of forget it was there, but I kind of like it. So I'm like, well, 1 or 2 pictures a day is nowhere near what I was doing with Twitter. So I'm not normally moderate. So this feels like this is how you behave as a moderate human being. Right. So you don't just cut out everything, you just start. So I've been thinking about, well, if I'm going to only do 1 or 2 Instagram pictures a day, then maybe they could mean something rather than just be throwaway kind of. So I've kind of enjoyed that as a creative little exercise in itself, really.
It's interesting, like it's reassuring to me that there is someone else like that. you're also having the same issues that I am, but particularly that it's you, because you are someone I always think of as being very in the real world and very pro real human beings getting together in physical space. But maybe that just means that you're more conscious of it, and everybody's actually like this.
Well, the box that we'll probably talk about in a minute, Playbox, which is the shipping container, which puts play in real spaces. What I notice when I go out to a lot of places is people aren't walking around with their phones all day long, clamped to their hands. And, if you say, shall we share this on social media and get into that conversation, or would you text the box if you wanted to know when we're next open? People don't have it in their hand like I do. It's like, oh, they go forage in their bag, or they say it's not with me, and I'm just like, oh my god, I am not normal.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that was a real eye-opener, because I did think there were a lot more people like me out there, which is like one step away from having it transplanted under my kind of cutting out the device and actually just going, well, I'll just use my fingers and wave them around in the air instead of this thing that keeps dying of battery.
Yeah.
And so I suppose with a desire to want to be able to be in the moment more with those people, rather than thinking, is there a sort of cute marketing picture, or there's always that tension between capturing moments and just being in the moment. So it feels more honest in a lot of ways to go, let's just be in the moment and forget the marketing. The marketing will take care of itself. I feel quite vulnerable even saying that, actually, because there is that bit where you think, I'm here, but I'm also observing. Yeah. And it's how can you be both without being disingenuous, or does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, because when we should explain what your Playbox concept is really at this point, I think, because I've read things that you've written about it where you have said that really that thing of it's difficult to mediate the fact that you're trying to provide something for your local community, but you're very aware that you're probably more educated than them and from somewhere else, and there are differences, and you're kind of taking photos of them and reporting on them almost like an anthropologist, but at the same time you are in that world and you are taking part and you're legitimately a member of that community. It's a really interesting position to be in.
Well, I think it's really horrible, actually. Because we do stuff in local communities. We also go into shopping centres and wherever we're booked, so there is in my own local community, there's massively that tension, because I'm a neighbour, I'm a friend, I'm someone who they can come and knock on the door of at any time, the kids who want the Playbox opening. So it's kind of the boundaries between my professional or creative pursuit of Playbox and being a community member where it sprang from really is really blurred. So I'm really conscious of it in those scenarios. Now, if I'm booked, like Land Securities will book us to go to Cardigan Fields and Kirkstall or other sort of commercial bookings, it's very different. I feel very different in that respect. Less kind of conflicted, I guess. But when you're hanging out with neighbours, friends, people that you commission as artists to deliver a workshop or whatever it might be, you're constantly trying to sort of juggle that. So when you say about telling stories or sharing the story or kind of creating more noise or buzz around why come to the play box, I'm conscious, and that's in my nature, how to do that. So the phone is definitely in my hand because I know how to then enhance what we're doing and get more people along, which is always the key thing. Not for the sake of it by itself, but to say, look, let's build engagement around this. So it's getting the balance right between and people telling their own stories as well, rather than it being me going, this is you doing something, I caught you at a moment of like some precious moment when you're in flow doing something, and now I'm just going to take a picture and share it without your consent or your permission. So that's not what we do at all. It's more a case of how do we do this in a sensitive fashion, which actually allows us to have conversations about people's use of technology as well, actually. So by getting out the phone and talking about texting or talking about, shall we share this on social media, we can have fairly sort of organic, informal conversations about why people do or don't, or how they use technology. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, actually, around the informal nature of conversations around how tech, has a place in our lives and where we feel like it adds, huge amount of value or not. So if that makes sense, by putting this box in a community where people aren't walking around with devices all day long, it initiates gentle conversations around who does use the, computer in your house, or what are the barriers to getting your homework done, or, things that are more natural than a sort of, come to this information technology hub scenario.
I mean, we should explain what it is. We still haven't.
Never explain. Guess what it is. It's whatever you want it to be.
The thing that I think you do, which you may dispute, is that you kind of create opportunities. You sort of go, here's a place or here's a scenario. Now you come and something will happen, and because something's happened, you'll have a better you'll have a better day than you would if you hadn't come.
Yes. That's the simple. So it is a 20-foot shipping container, but what comes out of it really is very random. I mean, sometimes we do very planned stuff, and we can communicate that. And with Layla and your group of people, you came and did some stuff in the park at Armley around magic. So there was definite sense of arrival. We know what's going to happen. The poster was brilliant. It went into homework bags. Everybody understood exactly what they were getting. It was a magic event, and it really was magical. And so those kinds of events help us create an attraction around the box as well for people who wouldn't normally be hanging around in that park or that place, which allows us also then to do the more informal. We're just opening the doors and you can have a rummage around inside, and really we're just your excuse to come to the park. Right. So we don't have to overmanage stuff. We can just say you weren't hanging around in this place as much. By sheer virtue of the fact that the doors are open, there's some seating and some other things you can play with. Let's see what happens. And sometimes that's all people actually need, is a reason to get out of their house. Sometimes there's a sense of, well, what's going to happen? What are we going to do here? And I love those questions, because it's like, well, what shall we make happen then? Rather than a prescriptive spoon feeding, we're delivering a service type thing. It's like, well, nothing's going to happen unless we put some energy into it.
I think it's an excellent message generally for life, isn't it? Because and people don't necessarily. I mean, I don't know. I'm not one of those people who goes, oh, kids today just get entertainment fed to them. They don't. And in my day, you had to build your own Lego out of some mud or something.
That's a good idea. Let's take it back a step.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for reminding people that if you want something in life, sometimes you have to make it yourself. It's a great message.
And it's really telling in places where, so like the fun fair came to Armley, and they have the most brilliant, I mean, I'm going to talk about marketing, but perhaps it's the wrong word, but how do you get people out of their houses? That's what I'm talking about when I talk about marketing, okay, in this. So their bill posters are a known sort of aesthetic. You see them everywhere. They plaster the entire place with it. It's really bold. It's black on fluorescent, what have you. Tells you exactly what's going to happen, and you're going to spend a shed load of money. And I've always been really terribly snobbish about fun fairs and think that, after being a child, when I actually did love them. So I made myself go to this one last year. And it was full of people that I wouldn't have expected to see there, spending ridiculous amounts of money. But I walked around it going, I wonder how they powered this. Oh, look, they've got matting over that cable. I was terrible. I was just like unpicking the technology of a fun fair when I was walking around going, I wonder what I could use of this for fun in a playbox. What would I do if I had playbox here? And I was just going around the fair and having a completely different experience to the rest of my family, who were just like enjoying the fair, right? And then I was looking at the colours and the lights, and I was thinking, wow, I'm very into STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art and maths, not STEM, okay? So I was like, well, this is STEAM come to life, isn't it? It's like using colours, noise, it's science, it's art, it's all the senses of being completely and utterly, assaulted almost, and that's part of its shtick. And I was looking at the kind of ways that the boys and the girls who fancied each other were sort of like, and it was all coming back to me in the nostalgia stuff. And I said, look at this to my husband, and I was pointing at this kind of like, it was almost like, what's that film? Grease. Right. Grease moment. And he's like, Emma, just enjoy it, go on a ride. That is sort of a lot of places I go to. What is expected of fun and play? Okay, it's the soft play centre, it's the ballpark, it's the fun fair. And so I'm not dismissive of that. I think, how do we recreate the fun fair? But at the same time, so how do we have everything, basically? How do we have our cake and eat it? How do we do the stuff which is the fun fair, or even be at the fun fair, with people creating their own fun fair? That's kind of it. I've never been very good at putting in funding bids, so I can't say that I'm rubbish at getting funding. I'm just not very good at actually doing the funding bit. So when I look at fun fairs, I was going to have to avoid punning here, but I'm like, this is how they're generating their own cash for pleasure, basically. What can we learn from that? So whilst I appreciate the convention of a fun fair is very different to, or a circus or what have you, is very different to other public kind of participatory things, I'm like, we could learn so much from the way that they work. I feel like if I can make Playbox as magic as an experience at the fun fair, that it could sit equally well as an attraction within a fun fair and not look crap in comparison, then I think that we can take it out anywhere, really. And so the question is to how much can we magic up the Playbox without losing that thing of participation around involving people in being part of that magic. How simple and obvious does the language need to be? How clear, how engaging for all ages and cultures? Can we evoke nostalgia? As a thing of STEAM, as I've mentioned before, what are the limits of this one box in terms of being able to power it, make playful tech projects, not to the detriment of hanging around with like a sack to jump and do a sack racing, for example. It's got to be able to do all those things. Well, it doesn't have to. It's just what I want it to.
Yeah. That's my worry, is that maybe if it was like, really specialised, and you were just kind of going, what we do in this is we do a circus workshop for the kids, like that's the purpose of it, then you're set. You could go anywhere with that, and you would know exactly how it had to look, and it would always look like that, and there would be no. But because you're kind of, I want it to be everything, which I understand, and I think it's admirable. But I feel like that as well, like about, what my projects are like. I always, I change my mind and I want to do something else, and I want to include everybody and want it to be everything, and I feel like that prevents it from being something which is pigeonhole enough for Bull to get some money out of it.
Well, I was listening to one of your creativity clinics earlier, and I noted something down and I took a picture of it. So hang on. It's about, and it always is about, creating the space for other people's imaginations. Yeah. So as part of my creative brief to myself, let's say, is to not over-engineer things. So how can, if you were like, without overthinking all of this, distilling a thing which enables other people's imagination to be as important to its growth and development, and always that way. So I think that's actually what we're quite good at, is not to over sort of spec something, but to make it clear that's its intent. So it's not I don't know, it's a lovely Rubik's Cube puzzle for me, to be quite honest. How do you get that balance right? enough so that we can take it to festivals and fairs and car parks and fields, anywhere really, and it has enough to get people coming along to work out what is it.
In fact, I tried to get it for that magic show that we did with you. That's why I think she wasn't available. It looks like a photo booth, and you get inside and stare into the camera, in inverted commas, and then a couple of minutes later, a little drawing of you gets pushed out of the hole, and there's an artist inside.
Yes, I love that.
Sitting inside.
Yeah, for a while we contemplated the idea that it was kind of a box that, well, it can do this anyway, but ask questions, because I love asking questions, and that people thought they were texting. So it's like, I'd done a previous project where we developed a bit of a chatbot as part of March the Robots.
Oh, cool.
So I'd kind of gone through the whole kind of logic tree of, if it says that, then this is the answer kind of thing. So a bit Magic 8 Ball. But we thought, wouldn't it be funny actually if that was the conceit, people thought they were texting the box and the box was responding to it, but actually it was a human being inside. But then we started thinking, well, they might not have any oxygen, and how would they go to the toilet? And where would they sleep? So we kind of bored ourselves with that idea after a while, but the same thing still appeals, the sort of mechanical Turk principle, you know. The problem is there aren't enough hours for all the ideas. I like the idea of a massive big red button on it, which literally says press play, and by pressing that red button something is going to happen somewhere, maybe in the box, maybe outside the box, maybe somewhere else. I kind of love that whole make the physical and digital converge kind of bit. I definitely were going to make that happen.
What did you do with the British Art Show in the end?
We had a scant amount of time and money, which is usually the case. So we were on Victoria Gardens outside the art show, and we basically responded to the public. So we had I had a little bit of budget to go and raid pound shops and do things, and the weather was really inclement. So we ended up doing Hack a Quack, which was a kind of hacking rubber ducks, getting people to make lights in them and little messages, and think about putting them on potholes and, you know, on the way back. So they decorated up their ducks. Right. And then nobody really wanted to leave them in a pothole, which was the flaw in that plan, because I love the idea of tracking ducks as well.
I remember you talking about this before. Yes. Yeah, brilliant.
So we got halfway there, and the cost of the sort of tracking kind of software, if you want to go down that route, was still too expensive about 18 months ago. But, you know, as technology prices are coming down, there's still, and more innovations out there, still love the idea of using kind of quirky everyday objects to track and trail and what have you. But they were lit up from inside, and they had little messages in them, and then people sent pictures on their travels, so back on the bus with their ducks. And so I do love all that kind of, how do we respond to the uncertainty of an environment and to create a physical welcome out of very little kind of warning. So improvising, actually, I think it is. And that really is terrifying, actually, because if you think, right, I don't know what we're going to do particularly, we can have a plan, but that plan gets jettisoned as soon as you're in a place and it's absolutely lashing it down, and nobody wants to come and hang out in a very small box with you. You've got to start thinking on your feet. So we also went and bought loads of clear plastic umbrellas and got people with glow sticks to decorate up their umbrellas, and then we made people dance in the rain and do singing in the rain. And so with linking to the British Art Show, we did a kind of fun 3D visualisation of people's response to the art show. So it was a Lego piece of like it's very X Factory. It was kind of red for loved it, yellow for lukewarm, and blue for left me cold. And we basically just asked everybody who came out of the British Art Show to place a brick on this Lego thing to say how they felt about it and get talking about their experience. And it was really interesting because it obviously grew in 3D as the week went on, and it, you know, people got really kind of like precise about where they wanted to place their brick. So can I not have an orange here, because I'm really torn between loving it and being lukewarm and whatever. Some people wanted black bricks to say they absolutely hated it. So, you know, as kind of we're really interested in generating conversation playfully, that was perfect for us, because then we could just get people talking about that, and people were responsive to other people's bricks as well. Right. You know, so because it was 3D feedback, they were like, well, I don't know why they've done that one. And, you know, they'd want to go, look at them, why have they put it there, and things like that. So it was good in itself for that. kind of secured a zone in a way where we talked to different people like Network Rail, and we said, look, we're going to do this thing where we're going to ask people to respond to the physical space and come up with ideas about how to make it more playful. They're not going to actually do anything of permanent, lasting damage, we hope. But just be aware that if people coming around taking pictures or drawing things or whatever, that's part of an event. So we invited Scott Burnham. I don't know if you've ever come across him. He had an amazing website and was an urban play creator, or still is, I think, going around the world creating play festivals, which seems to me like the best job in the world. And he came and did like a beginning bit of this event, which was to give us a sense of what everybody else around the world was doing, and it with like just reusing and repurposing existing sort of street furniture, just looking differently at where you live kind of stuff. And so we then split everybody into groups and gave them a £10 budget and said, right, now go and do something, come up with some ideas about how you'd make this playful. So the video that you saw really was about 6 or 7 groups going off and doing different things across the city, including one of my favourites, which was because of the construction work with Trinity, there was a overhanging kind of ledge, sort of about 20 foot up, and it looked a bit like a diving board. So this one group had decided that they were going to create, from the cast of their own legs, a pair of legs sort of coming out of the water like they were doing a dive. And then like street art, one of them was a street artist, like all the ripples out of this splash. Cool. And then they created signs which said danger diving in progress. And the whole point, the mission of your £10 was to get people smiling and looking differently at where they live. And I would love to do Urban Mischief as a kind of thing that other cities would potentially do, so we could all do it on the same day and with the same kind of process. See, and it could grow so that there's an Urban Mischief day. So yes, if anyone's listening, if you fancy doing an Urban Mischief, be well up for that.
I do, for sure.
Yes. It's the unknowable. So the play bit is like, yes, we could just roll out the same shtick all the time, but what is play is when you actually kind of go beyond the knowable somewhat, isn't it? And explore the people, what our boundaries are, and that I think is the metaphor for it, which is when we're in that state of play, we know we're playing. It's kind of slightly detached from real life, but we're playing, well, that's okay. It's when it's sort of other people encounter that and don't know we're playing. So we were doing things.
Just kind of imagine. Yeah.
And you do sort of have to think about that, because what your play might be enjoyable for your clique, let's say, or the group who know the terms of that play, when it encounters the rest of the world and they haven't been brought up to speed, it's how does your fun have an impact on someone else, physically, mentally, whatever. And that I think is quite an interesting area about play.
Yeah, really interesting, isn't it? Really interesting. Like how, because then you start to see it as almost an indulgence, especially as an adult. As a child, you expect them to be in a fantasy world and not having any understanding of boundaries. But as an adult, how do you play? How do you ignore those boundaries when you know about them?
And it's permission at the end of the day. I mean, long after the sort of event, I'd go back to people and say, so what was it? Do you think, if you could say what the essence of that was for you? And the thing that really struck in my mind was, it was like giving yourself permission in a time or a place where you don't normally play. And I think there's something around, we don't give ourselves permission as grown-ups to indulge our flights of fantasy, our playfulness. We do see it as frivolous rather than as deeply important to our souls and how we are, really, to allow ourselves to play, or to meet people playfully rather than in seriousness. But the kind of thing I would caveat that with is sometimes our play, we can get carried away with our worlds that we've created to the detriment of thinking about other people's safety, for example. Or what you might think is fun could be almost verging on the edge of excluding other people or bullying them. So there's something around a reflective bit of this, which is, how can you be both in play, or do you even have to care about it? So, if I think of as an artist, would I even care? I know this is a terrible question, but would I just go, sod it, I'm just going to go to the limits of this thing without care for the consequence? So I don't have the answer to that, because I'm very public-minded. So I'm always conscious of, it's no fun for me if my fun doesn't include other people, because that's where I start, is the public rather than what's in it for me.
This episode of Hack Circus is sponsored by Artifact Cards. It's ARTEFACT, artifactshop.com. I think you guys could get a lot out of Artifact Cards as people who are interested in creativity. They are little beautifully produced packaged cards about the size of playing cards, and you get a pen with them, and they're blank and they come in different colours, and they are great for anybody who works with ideas. Personally, I use them to do my flat planning for Hack Circus magazine. Amongst other things, you can use them to design things, so for me, that's an interesting idea. You have lots of little white cards that you can wipe clean, and you can lay them out in any arrangement and invent a game or design a website, design a layout for something physically in real space. And I think this is something that's really needed these days. You can use them instead of post-it notes, you can use them for planning talks, you can use them for planning, events, publications, any of the sorts of things I do, to be honest. So head over to artifactshop.com and see what all the fuss is about.
Where does it come from? I have been asking myself this question over Christmas because I think I've gone so deep into the matrix that I've even forgotten what play is, quite frankly. Play comes from a sense of being slightly naughty, I think, actually. So whether that's me or the children or anybody I come into contact with, it's this thing, again, of permissioning and stuff, but also there's playful potential in pretty much anything. It's just how you choose to look at the world, I think, and I think you can switch on or off. And so when I've got it switched on, the world is like amazing. I'm gonna I'll walk around and I'll see play anywhere and everywhere, and because I'm zealous and missionary about that, I'm just think, well, why shouldn't everybody else go around seeing exactly that same potential? Why would you ever be bored? What can give you that fun? I don't have to spend any money whatsoever to go around seeing the playful potential in things. It stems from that, I guess. It also stems from my nan, who passed away recently, was a pub landlady, and I spent formative years in very social, convivial, playful spaces where people could be together, be alone, play games, flirt. It's just a very convivial thing, and I could see how play could bring people together who were strangers. So whether that was crib or darts or cards or the sort of formal ways of playing. I could see group or individual play. I could see how she could play the room. So I've unpicked that. Obviously, as I've got older, I didn't sort of recognise that was what was happening as a child. And so I suppose there's that sort of sense of like, I'm always interested in how you create that space. Create space for people to come together and play. Some would say, well, it's a very instrumental way of looking at the world. I don't even know what that meant till a couple of years ago. But, how to play by itself is just a good thing. You really shouldn't have to sort of unpick it and make a big kind of Einstein says this, or we know it, but we sometimes feel like we've forgotten how to do it or to let ourselves go. And I don't want to be that sort of jolly kind of gosh, everybody can play kind of person, because that drives me mad too. This sort of zany, saccharine.
Yeah. And you're not like that. That's what's so interesting, I think, as well, is that you're not actually. You're almost the opposite. Like you are very you're sort of very thoughtful about it, and you're not just kind of like a primary school teacher coming in and saying, come on, let's clap and sing songs.
Nothing would sort of make me feel less happy than enforced participation. Yes. So there's this thing in me which is, I hate having to go and participate in other people's stuff, and if I feel like that, what's it going to be like for someone who might want to do something we're doing? I'm like, so how can I make it not sick making, basically? Because I really do hate that sort of soft play, colour pastel, everything's jolly thing. And that's why I sort of resist over delivering as well, I think, because it's like part of the play of that is how things unfold, as much as having a bit of an idea of what we're doing is great, but And I think people do seek comfort in knowing what they're there for. It's a bit freaky for the first time to be come along and told you've got a blank canvas and it's up to you. So there needs to be a little bit of structure, I think. But the perfectionism, if I have any, is thinking about what's enough so that people feel comfortable and confident and then start to come up with their own play.
The thing that I like about you, I think, is that you know that people need to be excited, and that's not something that everybody realises, especially coming from a more academic background, which is kind of how I think of you. But it's that, like, just don't be ashamed, don't be British about it, like just get excited, like there's bright colours, there's amazing things to watch and do, like just let yourself go, you know.
Well, if you go back to the pub sort of analogy, I think or the fun fair actually, both afford a sort of environment where you can step in or step back.
Right.
And I think if you think about participation, doing something, going somewhere, being part of something, people don't always want to be centre stage. They don't always want to be the person at the front of the magician's table. You know, a lot of people would like to lurk. And I think it's really equally important to create that sense of, keep going back to that, enough reason to get off your bottom and leave the house, potentially. Or the same metaphor, let's say, applied to doing something online. So it's about the spirit to action, to do something that you weren't doing. Enough of that, enough trust that it's going to be worth you doing, and then enough space for you to be able to make choices for yourself. So it's sort of in a metaphor of like arts and culture, I think a sense of abundance is a great thing. You don't have to go to it all, but you know that it's happening makes you feel equally good as actually going along to it.
Yeah.
So the excitement has to be enough of a magnet to make you go, I kind of know what it is and I trust it's going to be okay. And sometimes we do things in the arts and cultural world which have no context for people. It's not like the fun fair coming to town. There's not the language that people are used to speaking in. And so they don't know what they are going to get excited by. They don't know how to trust this thing. And it's certainly, in my experience anyway, it doesn't seem to be the norm that you go out to where people are. So the fun fair gets that entirely. It's coming to you.
Yeah.
And so if you imagined theatre or any kind of arts and cultural thing going, right, get out of our buildings, because the purpose of why we're in our buildings in the first place, we think, was to do stuff with an audience. But we've become stuck in this box, literally.
Yeah.
So in my view, it's like, let's take the box out to the people and create the theatre, the spectacle, the reason to participate in something. But it's a little box, it can't do all the things. So I don't know if that's answered the question really, but I think the bit about sparkle and excitement is something that we shouldn't be snobbish about, for sure. Like, if I could be Willy Wonka, because I like Willy Wonka because he's actually quite dark as well. So there's all the things that we know we love, you know, the sweets, the floating up in oxygen, the kind of what's the next room, we don't know what, but we know something's going to happen. But it's tinged with other things as well, which kind of takes it away from being that happy clappy play. So, you know, if I could, without being weird, be like the Willy Wonka, and I just don't want this to now be broadcast, but
you are the Willy Wonka of shipping containers. That's where it's going down. That's the strapline for this episode now. It's done. I think that what you're doing is really cool. I think it's really admirable. I guess there are most of my worries about the stuff you do is practical issues. I just kind of think, so you've bought a shipping container, how are you going to move that? But that's why it's good, because you do work it out. Yeah. And I kind of see you do. So you go, we'll just sort that out, and then we'll just get some money and get someone to move it with a crane, and we'll put it there instead. And it looks, and it must be horrendous for you, but you sort of take it in your stride and you sort it out, and that's inspirational to me. But I also worry, because I like you and I think I don't want you to have to go through this. Like, just get a tent instead. So I always think, get a tent instead, or get a van. That was my other thought. Yeah. But you decided to go for it, and it is what it is, and there's no one else doing that, you know, and stand by it, I say.
And I mean, the actual stuff that you've kind of outlined is kind of like a fun, creative puzzle again.
Okay,
you know, the bit of where now, we got turfed off of some land that we had full permission to be on, I might add, and had to find at very short notice a location for it. So I went through a day of rage, let's be honest. I'm not going to pretend that didn't really disrupt my worldview for a day. But then again, it's like everything becomes a kind of opportunity to kind of go, okay, so what does this tell us about land and power? How are you empowered and disempowered in the civic spaces, let's say? The invisible crosshairs thing I referenced, that comes to that because there's a whole series of people out there who might not want you on their land, even if you think you've ticked all the boxes about being on that land, okay? So the once you've got over your kind of immediate sort of like reaction to things, it actually becomes very interesting. It's a great way of learning about moving stuff about, power. And so the practical bits of the play box, which I probably haven't touched on actually, and this kind of evokes John Berger, in fact.
Nice, the late John Berger.
Yes, who influenced my thinking massively when I watched Ways of Seeing, because nobody encounters that box exactly the same as each other. So when I did March of the Robots, which was this huge, sprawling, very hard to understand kind of project, I realised I kind of needed a box actually to pack the ideas into something people could understand. And I particularly struggled with concepts and ideas trying to convey the point of things like March of the Robots to engineers and people who wanted to know about inputs and outputs. Why are you doing it? Well, that's one thing, but how big do you want that robot to be? What's it got to do? You know, they were very kind of like process oriented and very much about the outcome and outputs. And so having a box allows you to have conversations with people which might be about the formal qualities of a box. So how did it get here? How did you shift this around? Why doesn't it have wheels? Why isn't it a tent? What do you do with this box? And so it's like having... it's a conversation starter, okay? But it means that some people who are interested about what comes out of the box can immediately get into the content, programming, what's the point of this, philosophical, whatever. And some people just literally want to know how much it cost. Where did I get it from? Who drives it round? So it has the most amazing potential to be a conversation starter and a learning opportunity, really, which does sound like an academic way of looking at it. But
it sounds like a resourceful way of looking at it. Like you've gone, like, what are all the things we can get out of this? You know, like right up to the level of people having conversations about the power structure of the city, sort of thing. Like you're really kind of going, you know, there's so much you're seeing a lot. I guess that's the thing. You're seeing all these potential.
Some of the work I find really boring myself to do is that bit of process around what's essential for the box, you know, what would just enables people to get cracking, whether they feel imaginative or not, and what sort of reflection can we build into that? Because you're right, if we had a load of old recycled tyres in the box, and in Seacroft the kids found about 100 different uses for them, including rolling down the hills in them, you know, making obstacle courses. So if you are looking at it from an adult's perspective, but thinking, I need to learn from what the children are doing, not to necessarily control it, but just have faith, actually, that put some materials out and the kids work it out for themselves. So what can we as adults learn from that too? You know, did I want to roll down a hill in a tyre? Well, I couldn't fit in one for a start, but there were loads of things I could see them doing. I think, oh, that would be fun. But there's a bit where I go, but what would be even more fun is being able to sit next to somebody and have a cup of coffee whilst the kids are doing that.
Yes.
So you don't always have to go, oh, I've got to play. It's just like, what makes you feel good, really? And knowing your kids are playing and being creative and imaginative and making new friends and all the rest of it, it's half the battle, really, in that respect of what play can do for communities and young people. And I can speak for a number of adults who just want to take the weight off their feet, let their kids run off that energy and feel they're doing something creative, constructive, safe, healthy. It doesn't have to be much more complicated.
And that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed that chat. We had such fun. And it went on, I should say, for another few hours after what you heard there. In a section that I didn't have time to include, we sort of bonded over the idea of just having a room, how wonderful it could be, how wonderful it is to just have a room, have a space, and then you can make anything happen in that space. You can get people in, you can create a home for people and ideas, and it's a really amazing thing. So I've been thinking about that a lot since our chat. I mean, who doesn't want to own a pub? Who doesn't want to open a club. You know, it's these things that, and who doesn't want to open a cafe? If you look back to the Valentina episode from a few weeks ago, Emma's just a sort of fantastic example of somebody who has a real drive to do something new that doesn't exist, and then goes and makes it happen. And that's what this show is all about. Thanks for listening. Only a few left now. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again next week.